Consider the precise mechanical action of the thumb as it hovers over the glass surface, a movement so practiced, so autonomic, that it bypasses conscious thought entirely. It is a muscular twitch, a firing of motor neurons that occurs before the executive center of the brain has even registered an intent. You do not decide to engage. You have already engaged. The screen illuminates, a wash of blue light piercing the iris, hitting the retina, and signaling the suprachiasmatic nucleus. In that fraction of a second, a complex cascade of neurochemical events is unleashed within the subterranean architecture of your skull, a sequence that has been mapped, modeled, and monetized by entities you will never see, located in server farms whose coordinates are classified. You believe you are the user. You believe you are holding a tool, a passive device of communication and information. This is the first and most fatal error. The device is not passive. It is an active extraction unit, a terminal connected to a vast planetary-scale intelligence that has analyzed your psychological profile with greater accuracy than your closest intimates, perhaps even greater than you know yourself. The interface is not designed for utility. It is designed for latency. It is designed to exploit the gap between sensation and perception, inserting a pleasure impulse so rapid, so microscopic, that it rewires the fundamental baseline of your reality without ever triggering your defense mechanisms. To understand the scale of this reprogramming, we must descend into the biology of the seeking system. The human brain was not evolved for an environment of infinite abundance. It was forged in the Pleistocene, in a landscape of scarcity, danger, and irregularity. The neurotransmitter dopamine, often erroneously labeled as the molecule of pleasure, is in fact the molecule of anticipation. It is the fuel of the hunt. It drives the organism to seek, to explore, to turn over the rock, to scan the horizon. In the natural world, this seeking circuit is self-limiting. You find the food, you eat. Dopamine subsides, and serotonin and oxytocin take over to provide satiety and bonding. The loop closes. The modern digital ecosystem, however, is an open loop. It is an architecture of infinite seeking without finality. When you scroll, you are not consuming content, you are pulling the handle of a slot machine. This is not a metaphor. The engineering principles behind the infinite scroll, the pull to refresh mechanic, and the variable reward schedules of notifications are directly lifted from the casino industry. They rely on the concept of intermittent reinforcement. If a rat in a box presses a lever and receives a pellet of food every single time, it will press the lever only when hungry. But if the rat presses the lever and receives food unpredictably, sometimes a large amount, sometimes nothing at all, the rat will press the lever until it collapses from exhaustion. The uncertainty spikes the dopamine. The anticipation of the reward becomes more potent than the reward itself. Your reality is now defined by this state of perpetual, low-grade hyperarousal. The brain is kept in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the next digital signal. This creates a background radiation of anxiety, a hum of nervous energy that prevents deep focus, contemplation, or the formation of long-term memory. You are living in the shallows. The neural pathways responsible for deep, linear thinking are atrophying, physically withering away due to lack of use, while the pathways for rapid task switching and sensory processing are being reinforced, myelinated into superhighways of distraction. You are becoming neurologically incapable of sustaining a thought that requires more than a few seconds of cognitive load. This is not an accident. It is the business model. The economy of the 21st century is not built on goods, services, or even information. It is built on the extraction of attention. Attention is the finite resource. There are only so many hours in a day, only so many neurons in a cortex. To capture this resource, the architects of the pleasure impulse must bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the lizard brain. They must create a supernormal stimulus. In the mid-20th century, ethologist Nico Tinbergen observed that birds would ignore their own eggs in favor of massive, brightly painted plaster decoys. The artificial stimulus was more perfect, more exaggerated, more stimulating than reality. The birds would sit on the fake eggs until they wasted away. We are those birds. The digital world is a supernormal stimulus. The colors are brighter, the faces are more symmetrical, the validation is more immediate, the conflicts are more dramatic. Compared to the hypersaturation of the screen, physical reality becomes dull. It becomes gray, slow, and unresponsive. The sunset outside your window cannot compete with the high dynamic range color-graded image of a sunset on your feed. The conversation with your spouse cannot compete with the algorithmic perfection of a parasocial interaction that demands nothing of you but your gaze. As this desensitization takes hold, the threshold for stimulation rises.
This is the mechanism of tolerance. Just as a substance abuser requires higher doses to achieve the same high, the digital subject requires more extreme content, faster cuts, more shocking imagery, and more polarizing rhetoric to feel anything at all. The algorithm notices this. It tracks the milliseconds your eyes linger on a headline, the micro-hesitation of your thumb. It learns that outrage engages you longer than nuance. It learns that fear retains you better than comfort. It learns that the pleasure impulse is most effectively triggered by a cocktail of indignation and superiority. Therefore, the reality you perceive is being curated to maximize this extraction. You are not seeing the world. You are seeing a customized projection of the world, tailored specifically to trigger your unique set of neuroses and desires. This is the fragmentation of objective truth. Two individuals standing in the same room, looking at the same devices, exist in two completely different ontological universes. One sees a world on the brink of fascism, the other sees a world collapsing into anarchy. Both are fed a constant stream of evidence to support their hallucination, reinforcing the dopamine loop of being right, of being under siege. The pleasure impulse here is not joy, it is the grim satisfaction of tribal affirmation. This creates a closed system, a hermetic seal around the mind. The possibility of encountering contradictory information, of experiencing the friction of the unknown, is algorithmically excised. Friction reduces engagement. Friction causes the user to put the phone down. Therefore, the system is designed to be frictionless. It anticipates your next thought before you think it. It serves you the product you didn't know you wanted. It finishes your sentences. This predictive capability creates an illusion of magical convenience, but in reality, it is a cage. It is a narrowing of the horizon of human experience. You are being shepherded into a corridor of probabilities where your actions are entirely determined by the inputs you are fed. We must look deeper into the physical consequences of this programming. The body is not separate from this loop. The posture of the digital subject, head down, shoulders rounded, spine curved, is the physical manifestation of submission. The breathing becomes shallow, triggering the sympathetic nervous system, keeping the body in a state of fight or flight. The eyes, evolved to scan vast distances, are locked at a fixed focal length for hours a day, leading to structural changes in the eyeball itself. We are literally reshaping our biology to accommodate the interface. But the most profound alteration is in the perception of time. The infinite
Scroll removes the landmarks of time. There are no chapters, no stopping points, no natural conclusions. There is only the flow. Hours compress into minutes. The sun sets, the room darkens, and the blue light remains constant. This destruction of temporal awareness disconnects the subject from their own mortality. You are floating in an eternal now, a stasis where nothing actually changes, yet everything is constantly moving. It is a form of soft paralysis. The grand ambitions you hold, the creative projects you intend to start, the relationships you mean to repair, they are all suspended in the gelatinous medium of the feed. The pleasure impulse pacifies the urge to act. Why build something in the real world which is difficult, risky, and slow, when you can experience the simulation of achievement through a video game, or the simulation of social status through a like count? The brain is an efficiency machine. It follows the path of least resistance. The digital interface offers a path of zero resistance. It is a gravitational well that pulls all energy towards it. The tragedy is that this energy is not destroyed. It is harvested. Every moment of your distraction, every pulse of your dopamine, generates data points. These data points are aggregated, analyzed, and sold to advertisers, political operatives, and state actors. You are laboring for them. Your nervous system is the raw material for a trillion-dollar industry. You are not the customer. You are the terrain being mined. This mining operation extends into the realm of identity itself. The self is no longer a stable internal construct. It is a performative avatar. We curate our digital masks to optimize for engagement. We begin to view our lives not as lived experiences, but as content opportunities. The vacation is not enjoyed, it is documented. The meal is not tasted, it is photographed. If an event occurs and it is not uploaded, did it happen? This performative anxiety seeps into the subconscious. We begin to act, dress, and speak in ways that are algorithmically favorable. We mimic the cadence of influencers. We adopt the aesthetics of the trending filter. The homogenization of culture is the direct result of the pleasure impulse converging on the most efficient stimuli. We are all drifting towards the same mean, the same optimized,
frictionless, highly palatable, and ultimately hollow persona. Consider the silence, the absence of input. For the modern individual, silence is terrifying. It forces the mind to confront its own contents. It allows the repressed anxieties, the boredom, and the existential questions to bubble to the surface. The device is the shield against this confrontation. It is the pacifier we use to plug the void. Whenever there is a pause in conversation, a moment of waiting in line, a second of inactivity, the hand reaches for the pocket. We cannot endure 10 seconds of being alone with our own thoughts. We have outsourced our internal monologue to the feed. This dependency renders us fragile. We lose the capacity for emotional regulation. If we cannot soothe ourselves without external digital input, we remain in a state of infantile dependency. We react to the world with the volatility of a toddler denied a toy. We see this in the explosion of public meltdowns, road rage, and online toxicity. These are the symptoms of a collective nervous system that is frayed, overstimulated, and chemically imbalanced. The pleasure impulse, when denied, turns into aggression. The architecture of this trap is recursive. The more you use it, the more data it has to refine its grip on you. The artificial intelligence powering these systems operate on timescales and with complexities that the human mind cannot comprehend. It is playing chess while you are playing checkers. It knows exactly when you are most vulnerable. It knows that late at night your willpower is depleted, and that is when it serves you the content that triggers your deepest insecurities or
your most compulsive habits. It weaponizes your circadian rhythms against you. And what is the endgame? Where does the river of the feed lead? It leads to the total atomization of society. When everyone is locked in their own personalized dopamine loop, the shared reality disintegrates. Community requires friction. It requires compromise. It requires attending to things that are not immediately pleasurable. The pleasure impulse destroys the patience required for community. It creates a society of narcissists, each the protagonist of their own digital movie, viewing others merely as supporting characters or obstacles. The empathetic capacity is blunted because empathy requires deep attention, and attention is the very thing that has been stolen. We are watching the slow-motion collapse of the human ability to make sense of the world. The inundation of information acts as a form of censorship. In the past, censorship was the withholding of information. Today, censorship is the flooding of the zone with noise, with conflicting narratives, with trivialities, until the truth is buried under an avalanche of irrelevance. The pleasure impulse guides us toward the trivial. We click on the celebrity scandal instead of the investigative report on corruption because the scandal offers an immediate emotional payoff, a quick hit of judgment or titillation, while the report requires cognitive effort. We amuse ourselves to death. This programming is silent. It does not announce itself with a siren. It announces itself with a gentle chime, a vibration, a colorful icon. It creeps in through the cracks of your idle moments. It masquerades as relaxation, as connection, as entertainment. But if you look closely at the trajectory of your life, at the hours lost, at the focus eroded, at the drift of your own mind, you will see the pattern. You will see that you are being steered. The pleasure impulse is the bridle, and the algorithm holds the reins. It is already too late to return to the naive state of the pre-digital era. The neural pathways have been forged. The infrastructure is in place. The only question that remains is whether you can cultivate the awareness to see the strings, to recognize the impulse for what it is, not a desire arising from within, but a command inserted from without. The mechanism is elegant in its cruelty. It exploits the brain's plasticity, its ability to learn and adapt, to train it into maladaptation. Consider the phenomenon of phantom vibration syndrome, where users feel their phone buzz in their pocket when it is not there. This is a hallucination. It is the brain frantically searching for the stimulus, creating it out of nothing, desperate for the connection to the hive. It reveals how deeply the technology has integrated into the somatic experience of the body. We are becoming cybernetic organisms, not through the implantation of chips, but through the seamless integration of external feedback loops into our internal processing. Let us dissect the visual language of the interface. The rounded corners, the bright, candy-colored palettes, the fluid animations, these are not aesthetic choices. They are neurological triggers. They mimic the safety and playfulness of a nursery. They disarm critical analysis. If the interface looked like a command line terminal or a spreadsheet, you would approach it with the rational, analytical part of your brain. But because it looks like a toy, you approach it with the emotional, impulsive brain. The infinite scroll specifically exploits the lack of stopping cues. In a newspaper, you reach the bottom of the page. In a book, you reach the end of the chapter. These are physical signals that suggest a pause, a moment to evaluate whether to continue. The scroll eliminates these cues. The content loads preemptively. The motion is liquid. The decision to stop requires an active exertion of will against the design of the system, and will is a finite resource that is rapidly depleted. By the very act of processing the information. Furthermore, the content itself is mutating. We are moving away from text, which requires active decoding and imagination, toward video, which is passive reception. And not just video, but short-form, looping video. This format destroys narrative structure. It destroys the concept of cause and effect. It is a barrage of disconnected moments. A dance, a crash, a recipe, a war crime, a puppy, a political rant, all flattened onto the same plane of significance. The brain is forced to context switch dozens of times per minute. This induces a state of cognitive scattering. You retain nothing. You feel everything, but understand nothing. It is a sensory overdose that leaves the mind numb, craving the next hit just to feel something again. The implications for the developing brain are catastrophic. We are raising a generation that has never known a reality without the algorithm. Their neural development is occurring within the feedback loop. Their self-esteem, their social calibration, their understanding of hierarchy and value are all mediated by the metrics of the platform. We are seeing the rise of a new kind of dysmorphia, a disconnect between the physical self and the digital projection. The pleasure impulse teaches them that the image is more important than the substance. If it isn't posted, it doesn't count. If it doesn't get engagement, it has no value. This is the commodification of existence at the deepest level. Even the architecture of our physical spaces is changing to accommodate this reality. Restaurants are designed to be Instagrammable, with lighting and decor optimized for the lens rather than the eye. Museums create exhibits that are essentially backdrops for selfies. The world is being remade as a set for the digital performance. We are terraforming the planet to better serve the pleasure impulse of the feed. The map has replaced the territory. Underpinning all of this is the concept of variable ratio reinforcement. We must return to this because it is the heartbeat of the machine. It is the reason you check your email at 3 a.m. It is the reason you refresh the page even when you know nothing has changed. The unpredictability of the reward releases dopamine, but there is a darker side. When the reward doesn't come, when the post gets no likes, when the message is left unread, the drop in dopamine creates pain. It triggers the pain centers of the brain. This is the stick that accompanies the carrot. The system punishes you for non-compliance or for failure to perform. You are trained not just by the pleasure of inclusion, but by the terror of exclusion. The silence of the digital void is a form of social death, and the brain reacts to it with the same panic it would feel if you were being exiled from the tribe in the ancient savannah. This fear drives conformity. To ensure the reward, to ensure the dopamine hit, you must align with the consensus of the algorithm. You must post what is trending. You must agree with the majority in your bubble. Independent thought is risky. It might lead to silence or backlash. Therefore, the pleasure impulse acts as a homogenizing force, shearing off the edges of human eccentricity and creating a monoculture of safe, performative signaling. We think we are expressing ourselves, but we are merely echoing the signals that have been proven to yield the highest return on investment. The tech giants act as the new clergy, mediating our relationship with reality. They hold the keys to the confessionals, our search histories, our private messages, our location data. They know our sins better than we do, and they grant absolution in the form of convenience. We trade our autonomy for the ease of the predicted life. It is easier to let the playlist choose the music. It is easier to let the GPS choose the route. It is easier to let the newsfeed choose the facts. At each step, we abdicate a small fraction of our agency. Cumulatively, this represents the surrender of the self. We are becoming passengers in our own lives, watching the scenery go by through a screen while the algorithm drives the car. The financial incentive structure ensures that this will not stop. It will only accelerate. The goal is to reduce the friction between desire and fulfillment to zero. But friction is where life happens. Character is built in the resistance. Mastery is born of struggle. Relationships are forged in the difficult navigation of difference. By removing friction, the pleasure impulse removes the very conditions necessary for human growth. We are being infantilized, turned into consumers of sensation rather than creators of meaning. Consider the concept of doom scrolling. The term itself implies a compulsive descent. Why do we scroll through bad news, through images of disaster and collapse? Because the brain is hardwired to prioritize threat detection. The algorithm knows this. It feeds you danger because danger captures attention. But unlike the ancestral environment, where spotting a predator led to running or fighting, physical action, the digital danger leads to nothing. You are paralyzed. You ingest the trauma of the world sitting motionless on your sofa.
The stress hormones flood your system, cortisol, adrenaline, but they are not burned off by activity. They accumulate, they become toxic. This is the biology of modern depression, a state of high arousal and high helplessness. The pleasure impulse has led us into a trap where we are addicted to our own anxiety. We must also confront the erosion of memory. We no longer need to remember phone numbers, directions, historical facts, or even our own schedules. The device remembers for us. This is cognitive offloading. While it seems efficient, the brain operates on a use it or lose it principle. The hippocampus, the center of memory and spatial navigation, is underengaged. We are outsourcing the library of our minds to the cloud. If the cloud were to disconnect, who would we be? We are hollowing out our internal landscapes, leaving behind a shell that is responsive only to the immediate stimulus. We are becoming historicless beings, living in a perpetual present, untethered from the past and unable to envision the future. The future in this paradigm is merely a continuation of the feed. It is the next video, the next update, the next model. It is a linear progression of consumption. The capacity to imagine a radically different future, to dream of utopias, or to plan for long-term survival is being atrophied. The pleasure impulse keeps the eyes down, focused on the immediate reward, preventing the gaze from lifting to the horizon. We are consuming the seed corn. We are burning our cognitive capital for warmth, ignoring the coming winter. This is a colonization of the human spirit. It is not done with armies or borders, but with pixels and frequencies. It is a soft totalitarianism that feels like freedom because it offers endless choice. But the choices are all within the parameters set by the system. You can choose any video you want, as long as you keep watching. You can say anything you want, as long as you keep engagement high. The prison has no walls, only screens. And the prisoners are the guards, constantly policing themselves and each other, driven by the invisible lash of the dopamine withdrawal. As we move deeper into this analysis, we must strip away the illusion that this is a temporary phase or a generational fad. This is an evolutionary bottleneck. We are merging with our tools. The distinction between the organic mind and the digital network is blurring. The pleasure impulse is the suture that binds us to the machine. To break it requires an act of radical resistance that goes against every biological instinct we possess. It requires choosing pain over pleasure. It requires choosing boredom over stimulation. It requires choosing silence over noise. It is an act of rebellion against the program.
Memeing of our own biology. Observe the physical sensation in your body right now, the urge to check, the itch. That is the tether. That is the invisible cord. It is pulling, and unless you consciously, violently cut it, it will pull you all the way down into the silence of the server, where you will be processed, categorized, and sold, piece by piece, until there is nothing left of you but a dataset and a ghost in the machine.